Hello, my name is Ai-Jen Poo, and I'm the director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance. Thank you so much for having me at the conference. I'm so excited to talk to you about our work collecting data about domestic workers during this time of crisis and pandemic. Just a little bit of context for you is that we work with the nannies, house cleaners, and home care workers who work inside of our homes. And it is work that makes everything else possible in our lives because it makes it possible for us to go and do the work that we do every single day, knowing that some of the most precious elements of our lives are in good hands. And this is a workforce that is overwhelmingly women, more than 90% women, and majority women of color. Black, Latinx, API, Native women, and most are primary income earners for their families, and most are also mothers of young children, including many, many immigrant women who do this work. And despite how important this work is in our economy and in our lives, it is some of the most undervalued and insecure work in our economy today. Most domestic workers work without a contract, have no access to a safety net or job security. And there are many, many reasons for why this is the case. This is work that has always been associated with women, and as a profession, always been associated with women of color and immigrant women, women of marginalized social status. And this workforce has faced a legacy of exclusion from basic rights and protections, everything from minimum wage and the right to collectively bargain, cornerstone labor laws that were put into place in the New Deal explicitly excluded domestic workers and also farm workers. And that really set the tone for how this workforce would be treated in our law and policy, and has created this incredible insecurity. There's one other dynamic here which makes establishing fair standards and raising standards really challenging, which is the disaggregation of the workforce. This workforce is spread out in millions of households all over the country. You could go into any neighborhood and not know which homes are also workplaces. Hidden behind closed doors, isolated, there are millions of workers working behind millions of unmarked doors. No list, no registry. And it makes both organizing the workers and establishing norms and standards and enforcing those standards incredibly difficult. But it is incredibly essential that we do so, because not only are the conditions really poor, these jobs are going to be a huge share of the jobs of the future. We have a huge and growing need for care in this country as baby boomers age into retirement at a rate of 10,000 people per day turning 65, and people living longer than ever. We need more care, elder care, support for people with disabilities than ever before, at the same time that millennials are having families and giving birth to 4 million babies per year. So across the lifespan, American families need more care than ever before. And these are jobs that can't be outsourced. They're not going to be automated. Many economists are predicting that these are going to be a huge share of the jobs of the future, and we have got to make them good jobs. And that is what the National Domestic Workers Alliance focuses on. We focus on winning change, bringing fairness and protections to this workforce so that it can be a recognized profession for the 21st century. And our strategies include changing policy, like establishing the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights nationally, mobilizing voters to participate and have their voices heard through civic engagement, engaging in what we call narrative and culture change, really changing the media and cultural narrative about this work, its value in our society, and the importance and the humanity of the people who do it. And also innovation, leveraging the power of technology to solve for the challenges that this workforce faces. And that's everything from the isolation of disaggregation to enforcing standards, to providing access to a safety net, seeing how technology can help us address and solve for some of those challenges. This is more urgent and important than ever before, as domestic workers have been really on the front lines of the COVID pandemic. In the first weeks of the pandemic and the stay-at-home orders, domestic workers were reporting dramatic losses in jobs and income. And we knew that because this workforce had been left out and left behind of so many protections, we did fear that relief would not reach this workforce, and we would need to provide solutions. And we quickly identified the need for real-time data to understand the impact of the pandemic and the economic fallout of it on this workforce to better inform and strengthen our solutions and our strategies and our rapid response strategies in particular. And so that launched this whole effort that we have been engaged in for over a year now to survey domestic workers weekly about the impact of the COVID pandemic. And we've been able to do that because in our community of over 280,000 domestic workers, we're able to reach 230,000 of them through a Facebook chatbot that we created called La Alianza, which allows us to communicate in real time with 230,000 Spanish-speaking domestic workers to better understand what they're experiencing in real time. And it's been a transformative tool and, to the best of our knowledge, the largest digital aggregation of Spanish-speaking domestic workers in the history of the country. And so we're able to really listen in a totally different way at scale to what's happening behind closed doors for this workforce. Just to give you a sense of our process, we survey a cohort that's a random sample of subscribers. For the first half of our research, we sent surveys to everyone in the chatbot each week, and after noticing a decline in response rates, we implemented a rotating sample to increase response rates and avoid survey fatigue. And our response rates went way up after that, and engagement has been really stable since then. And the quality of this data is really, really important. Research advisors have given us guidance on new questions that could be valuable to ask, rotating sampling methodology, and really helping us understand the potential for research with our data. And we've found that this has been a really important complement to some of the economic indicators that are more widely understood. So just some of the topics that we've surveyed on, everything from income and employment to housing and food security issues to most recently vaccine access. Over the course of the pandemic, we've completed 47 surveys with an average of 1,200 workers every single week. And on the vaccine specifically, we've had incredibly important data and insight into what's happening for this workforce. We've found that 10% of domestic workers who are surveyed have received at least one dose of the vaccine, which is lower than the national average. We've found that domestic workers do want the vaccine. 9 out of 10 have said that they would probably or definitely get the vaccine if it were available to them today, and that they need information about the rollout and eligibility. And a lot of people don't know if they're currently eligible. And that there are struggles, real struggles with getting access to appointments. Less than 12% of those surveyed who've tried to get an appointment have been successful. So we have a lot of work to do, and you can see how this just sharpens our ability to do what we need to do to serve this population. Just final learnings. We have workers at the center of everything that we do, and being able to have this kind of real-time data is transformative. It allows us to listen. It sharpens our impact, our ability to design strategies that are more impactful. And we complement it with anecdotal information from our leaders all over the country who are working in offline contexts with domestic workers, but having this kind of data is incredible in terms of the insight and understanding that we're able to have of what's happening. And we were building the plane as we were flying it. We definitely utilize rapid iteration and meta learning. It's in our DNA, and we certainly applied it here. And we have an innovation lab that is the home for creating these kinds of tools. And we really believe that that kind of innovation is absolutely essential and needs greater investment in the social change space, especially with organizations like ours that are so rooted in a constituency. And having that container has been transformative in terms of this data and this research we're able to do. So all of these pieces, really essential learning, and it has strengthened our ability to have an impact for domestic workers, where we were able to better tell the story in the media in real time about the impact of COVID on this workforce. We were able to better sharpen our priorities in terms of policy campaigning. We were able to move flexibly to move resources on the ground to affiliates, to be able to distribute PPE and incredibly important resources to address disinformation. And we were able to push for measures like the Essential Workers Bill of Rights with real-time data. And that sets us up for the policy solutions going forward, where we are going to be reimagining protections and a safety net for this essential low-wage workforce coming out of this pandemic and the economic crisis that has followed. This is an opportunity to take the experiences and the stories of workers, especially those who've been in the shadows, and put them at the forefront of how we redesign and rebuild our economic systems and policies, making sure that women of color in particular are able to lead on solutions and that their experiences are drivers for how we think about policy, and building a 21st century care infrastructure that invests in these jobs, as well as the ability of families to get access to the care that they need. These are all priorities for us, and this data will be informing our ability to realize these solutions, both in the immediate context of recovery from the COVID pandemic, but also long term. So with that, I want to thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about our work and the data that we've been collecting to inform it.